Now the term exposure is something that you're going to hear over and over again when it comes to talking about photography or filmmaking. Essentially, exposure is the amount of light collected by the sensor that's found inside your camera during a single picture. Now understanding exposure means you need to have an idea about what the image sensor actually does. Now the image sensor is a device that converts an optical image into an electronic signal. All digital cameras and other imaging devices will have a sensor. Sensors of DSLR cameras are generally larger than the sensors found in compact cameras. In future episodes we will be looking at the difference between full frame sensors, like this sensor here on the Canon 5D Mark II, and comparing them to cropped frame sensors which can be found on cameras such as the 40D. So when you take a picture, light enters your camera by passing through the lens and onto the camera's sensor. If too much light is allowed to enter, then the image that you've taken can be overexposed, or a term that is also used is called washed out. If not enough light passes through the lens onto the sensor, then your image will look too dark. This is classed as being underexposed. When the right amount of light enters the camera onto the sensor, your image will have a correct exposure. Now it's very important when analysing images that you use the correct terms. Overexposed when an image is too bright, underexposed when it's too dark, and correct exposure when the image is right. As photographers, knowing how to control your exposure manually will allow you to be more creative with your camera and take better pictures. The three primary controls your camera uses for exposure are shutter speed. This is the amount of time the sensor is exposed to the incoming light. Aperture. This is the size of the lens opening that lets light into the camera and onto your sensor. And ISO. This is how sensitive the sensor is in your camera to the incoming light. We will be looking at how we adjust and control shutter speed, aperture and ISO in the next episode. So to review, exposure is the amount of light collected by the sensor in your camera during a single picture, and can either result in an overexposed, underexposed or correctly exposed image.